Yeah. So I have two questions for you. So the first one I want to ask Aron specifically, because you have very good knowledge about religion, and I rarely see you counter Pascal wager based on your reading of other religions. So I wonder how you counter that from Christian, because when I read the Bhagavad Gita like you, my understanding of the text is that Krishna, like, he manifests in every form, like from angel, demons, human birth, and he is an incarnation of the previous gods. So, I mean, if we use Pascal wager, to say that if you don't believe in Jesus, if you believe in Vishnu, and what's going to happen? It's not. I don't think it's going to work, because dogmatic religion primarily they don't care about much about belief, but they care about what you do. So I guess when I hear atheists say, if you believe in Jesus and you don't believe in this God and that God, then you're going to suffer the same consequences. I don't think that's really good argument. So I wonder how you counter that.
It's funny because I haven't brought up Pascal's wager until day before yesterday. I was on stage in West Virginia at Marshall University, and I brought up Pascal's wager, I think, for the first time in my career. I said that Pascal's wager is invalid, and as he himself discovered when he died and found himself facing Allah and was being punished for worshiping the wrong God. And then said, well, what might have happened is he may have been reincarnated as a cow, and I ate him with ghost pepper sauce. And then I said, but of course, the only actual possibility here is that he died and stayed dead.
Yeah.
And so that was my one and only address in my career of Pascal's wager, and that was like day before yesterday.
That's interesting. You know what, Minh, I have you actually as a religious caller in our notes. Is that true?
Yes, I am, yes.
Oh, well, the show is about talking about what you believe and why. What do you believe? If you're not convinced by Pascal's wager, what pushes you towards staying religious? What's convinced you?
I know it's going to sound strange to me, but strange to you, but I'm pretty sure you read about Blackwater Emerson essays, right?
Blackwater? Is that what you said?
I'm sorry, Ralph Waldo Emerson essays.
Oh, Ralph Waldo Emerson's essays. It's been a long time. I was an English major at one point, but...
Yeah, so my belief is similar to him, which is called transcendentalism. I think, I don't believe like supernatural thing, but I do believe that probably there's something like a higher cause than, our flesh and blood. And I'm sorry, what is that?
Well, I was going to say that's a common theme. I mean, Spinoza and Einstein both said that they believe in a higher power, although Einstein was eventually forced to concede that what he means by that is not the traditional concept of a God. So we all, I have friends that want to object to the atheist label because they say they think that atheist means you don't believe in anything. And I said, well, I believe there's something. I'm like, okay, yeah, we all believe there's something. Is it a God? Right? And when we talk about higher power, I think that it's interesting. There was a poll done the American Association of Scientists. I can't remember what the actual name was. I'm muzzing that up. But there was a poll of a scientific organization where the poll asked, do you believe in a God or a higher power? And they only meant the phrase or higher power to clarify what they meant by a God. But the scientists took that to be a choice. And so there was a higher percentage of them that said that they did not believe in a God, but they did believe in a higher power. Well, what the hell is the higher power? Whatever it is, it's not a God.
Yeah.
Because they have a much loftier idea of what a higher power is than just a God. And we've no idea what a higher power might be. We don't have a definition for that, much like we don't have a definition for God. But we do have a concept that a God is, at least the way I define it, a magical, anthropomorphic immortal, which seems to me a very primitive notion. And if there is some higher power that you would recognize as such, or maybe even that I would recognize as such, it's not going to be the one the Bible describes, or probably not that any religious scripture describes.
Yep. I mean, otherwise you're just going to be defining gods into existence. If you say God is like the universe, man, okay, fine, fine. That's good. I guess my only objection there is that when people say, I believe in a higher power, or they think that just something is out there, what you do is you can leave the door open to magical thinking. And I warn against it, because we have one life. This is the one world that we get to share, and we do our best to try and live it by understanding concepts and creating this shared experience with each other. And that depends on us being able to understand things and communicate those things to each other in a clear and cogent way. And saying there's something that you really do think is out there, it can be damaging. And so I would just suggest to you, hey, maybe there's not. But if there is, okay, take that when there's evidence. But don't take that there has to be something out there just 'cause. Because when you do that, you open up the door to a lot of snake oil, to a lot of woo, to a lot of people who will come in and take advantage of people who just want to believe in something but don't have a good reason. And so I know that can be really tough to hear, but that is the most loving thing I can say to you.
We also want to clarify that when you say you believe something, you might only mean that you suspect that there might be. But the word believe to me implies something else, and it implies something else to believers too. When I say that I believe something, it doesn't mean just that I think that something is possible. It means that I'm convinced that it actually is so, but I can't prove it. And when a believer says they believe something, means that they make believe, they pretend that it's real, they convince themselves that it's real regardless whether it's real or not. And I don't think you're in either of those other two categories. I suspect by the context of what you're saying that when you say you believe it, that you suspect there's a possibility, and I'll grant that. So you and I are on the same page in that context.
Aron, we're going to need to talk a little bit about belief. I think we've got some disagreements here. Nothing too bad. Nothing too bad. But
there's three different contexts. Would you not agree that there are three different contexts that people use for the word belief, and those are the three I just mentioned?
Yes, but I think that that discussion is a whole lot better when you start saying, when you start using other words to help define them, so you can contrast them. So if you're talking about belief and you bring in the word faith, then you can separate those. Right. And I think separating those helps us better delineate what we mean when we come to understand what may be true or not true about the world around us.
Okay. Well, if you've got a disagreement, please clarify it, and I'll be happy to hear it.
All right. But I think we have Minh on the line.
Yeah.
So Eric, when you say that the way I believe can open to magical thinking, and so I wonder if that's the second question I want to ask both you and Aron, is that if people look at religious story as metaphor to address human issue, because I am one of them, then do you think that, I guess, having that belief is okay?
Well,
and I can give you the example too if you want.
Oh, there are plenty of examples of metaphors found in the Bible, and plenty of other holy books that can lead to a moral lesson. And there are plenty of stories in the Bible and other holy books that can lead to absolutely horrendous lessons. I think that if we're taking them as stories, there are plenty of other books that don't have genocide. There are plenty of books that don't advocate slavery and rape. There aren't so many books that advocate this idea, right? The Bible carries with it this notion that you're broken, right? It breaks your leg to sell you a crutch. It tells you you're sick so it can sell you the medicine. If you're looking for a story to make you feel good or to tell it to your children so that you can illustrate to them that there's a benefit, there's a moral lesson to be told, I would say the Bible and most of those other holy books, if we were to go through them, probably are among the least of the books that I would pick to make those lessons or to teach those lessons.
So, Edith, if you don't mind, let me give you one example about a religious story that I feel more inspired to help me go through some difficult time, than just talk about it straight through logical reasoning.
Well, hold on.
I don't know if you read
Minh, before you do,
go ahead.
You're sharing a story because it helped you through difficult times. Is that what you're saying?
Correct, yes.
So this story that you're going to tell, does it matter if it's true?
No, it's just a metaphor to address something I can relate better when I listen to it than if you tell me to follow this and that.
Okay, because
I'm interested in hear the explanation.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to know if this is a I hold this to be true type. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know the story called the mustard seed in Buddhist tradition.
I'm sorry that I'm not very fluent in Buddhism. So go ahead and please explain.
Yeah. So there was this in the story. There was a woman who lost her child, and she grieving about that, and she came to the Buddha and asked him to revive her child. So the Buddha said to her, I want you to go to your village and find me a mustard seed from a family that never experienced any death or loss. Bring that seed to me. I will make a medicine and I will help revive your child. So she went all houses in her village and could not find any mustard seed that from any family that does experience loss. So, and when she did that, she began to understand that she is not the only one who experienced death. Everyone around her does. So she went back to the Buddha and then she said that, I cannot find any mustard seed from any family that does not know death. So the Buddha said to her, yeah, so you see that death is a natural part of life, and you are not the center of the universe who experience this. So when you instead just engage to other people who experience loss, so you can, feel better about your situation, instead of, constantly grieve about that. And she does that, and then she become enlightened being because of that experience. So, when I read that story, I realized that whatever happened to my family or myself, I realized that I'm not the only one who experienced that. Other people around me does. And that story helped me realize that. And it's helped me, move on. So, but if you come to me and said that, forget it, you are not the center of the universe, so crying over that is not going to help you. I may not listen to you, but if you tell me the story like that, and I'm more likely, to reflect on my personal situation and find a way to grieve. And that's how I see religion.
Did you want to speak to that?
My relationship with Buddhism is strained and somewhat hypocritical, because I rejected the idea that bodhisattvas would be presenting about renunciation and life is suffering and that nothing is permanent, everything is lost, and it all seems so hopeless when you hear the Buddhists describe it. Yet when I talk about my own death, I say when either of us dies, that everything that was once us will be reduced to a couple dozen pounds of ape meat going bad, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But I'm not okay with the Buddhists saying essentially the same thing in different words. It just sounds better when I say it.
Yeah,
I feel somewhat hypocritical in that.
That's all right. I think that as we experience and as we go through and understand, our own mortality, it takes time. I know when I was coming out of religion, that was freaking terrifying. the fear of hell, the fear of death, the idea that I'm never going to get to see the people that I love again was rough. And again, Minh, I'm glad this is something that gave you peace, but this is something that you also agree probably didn't happen. Even if it did, it's not, the reason that we have this show is because we're trying to talk about your epistemology. We're trying to talk about why people believe things that might not be real or reasonable, and how we can depend on and how we can decide and determine what is true and what is false about the world that we're in. And while that is a very, while that's a very sweet story, Minh, hold on just a second, I'm almost done. While that's a very sweet story, I don't think that that is redeeming of religion. I think that there are some wonderful stories out there. I think there are things that we can tell each other to be there for each other, to teach empathy and kindness, to show that you're not alone in this world. I do that almost every weekend when I'm on this show, and I've never said that, you know, that I'm going to send you to heaven or hell.
And besides, when we're going to be talking about the problems with religion and you present Buddhism, it's like presenting your best student.
Well, to a degree, there's a lot of Buddhist violence, and there are different doctrines that...
I'm not arguing that.
Yeah.
I know there's hypocrisy throughout Buddhists, too.
And this caste kind of...
Yep.
But anyway.
Still, the best student. When you look at the other students, which one would you trot forward?
Taoism.
That's not technically a religion, though. It's connected to both Buddhism and to Chinese ancestor worship. And a lot of people will call it a philosophy. I don't. I think when I read the Tao Te Ching, I thought if I hadn't seen Star Wars first, I would have identified as a Taoist instead. Of course, I heard Obi-Wan Kenobi and identified. Not kidding. This is not a joke. I considered myself a Jedi for 15 years of my life.
Well, Minh, look where he got us.
Yeah.
I blame you.
Yeah. So, yeah, you know, I have to be honest with you that even though I am a believer, but I will admit with you that I tend to be rational in many areas in my life, but when it comes to areas such as love, altruism, dealing with suffering, I don't know, it seems like reading a biology book or physics book does not help. But actually, when I read a religious story or a religious text, it seems to resonate to me somehow. And of course, I don't believe in the supernatural aspect of the story or the teaching, but it served me like a prism. You know, like when the sun shines through a prism, we see 7 colors. And I'm only able to see that if I without that with that prism. So a religious story is like that. It's not the thing that I rely on just for the.
You don't think it's necessarily true. You haven't been fooled by it. You find there's a parable. You accept it as a parable, and you find some beauty in the tale. That's perfectly admirable. I don't have a problem with that at all.
If you call yourself a believer, though, and you say that that's just a tale that you don't believe, I think that provides ammunition.
Well, that's why I brought up before that when Minh says believe, I feel in the context of everything else being said here that the word is being applied as though it was, you know, I suspect that there is a possibility of this thing.
Yeah, that's just my emotional reaction to the circumstance. It's not like an evidence that something actually exists. It's just my feeling. So
can I make an admission to you as well? I have a motorcycle that I really love that I've put an awful lot of miles on. I've had for many years. I feel that I owe that motorcycle some kind of devotion or care because it served me so well, as if the motorcycle would ever be offended if I rode another bike or something like that. So it was completely irrational. I get that. But, you know, we're human. We have some irrational capacities. It's best to recognize those. Yeah. And I don't think it makes me a worse person for thinking that, you know, I actually should take better care of my bike than I do.
Well, it's nice to anthropomorphize some of those things. I'm wearing a pair of boots that I absolutely freaking love, and I probably pay more attention to those boots than I should. So I get you. I get you.